In the world of professional wrestling, fame can elevate you to the top overnight, but it can just as easily make you disappear without a trace. While WWE has created countless legends, not everyone remains part of that glorious history. Some names were once celebrated, praised, even considered the foundation of the company. But one mistake, one scandal, or one exposed secret was all it took for them to be wiped from the fans' memories. Today, let's take a look back at the wrestlers WWE tried to erase from history. Shining stars who ended up being burned by their own spotlight. Let's get started. Wrestling Sphere, go! Number 1. Dean Ambrose. If WWE could rewrite history their way, the name Dean Ambrose would probably vanish from the audience's collective memory. Before becoming world-renowned as Jon Moxley in AEW, Ambrose was one of the most crucial figures of WWE's modern era. He debuted in 2012 alongside Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, forming the legendary faction The Shield, a trio that completely changed how WWE built young stars at the time. With their guerrilla-style attacks, rebellious entrance music, and perfect chemistry, The Shield became a phenomenon almost overnight. Within the group, Dean Ambrose was portrayed as the lunatic, unpredictable, dangerous, and full of raw energy. He stood out not only for his creative in-ring offense but also for his charismatic mic work, mixing humor with defiance. After The Shield disbanded in 2014, Ambrose was the first to truly break out as a single star, winning over fans with his relentless fighting spirit and deliberate brand of controlled chaos. In 2016, he reached the pinnacle of his WWE career by winning the Money in the Bank ladder match and cashing in the contract later that night to defeat Seth Rollins, becoming WWE champion. It should have been the moment that cemented him as the company's next top star. Unfortunately, his title reign was derailed by flat storylines that failed to showcase his true personality. Even though the crowd adored him, Vince McMahon and the creative team seemed blind to Ambrose's long-term potential, gradually pushing him down to the mid-card. A severe injury in 2017 sidelined him for nearly a year. When he returned, he looked tougher and more intense than ever, seemingly poised for a major comeback. WWE even reunited The Shield, but just weeks later, Ambrose shocked the world by turning on Seth Rollins, on the very night Roman Reigns announced his battle with leukemia. It was a shocking, emotional moment that should have ushered in a dark, compelling era for Ambrose's character. But WWE ruined it. Instead of molding him into a dangerous, layered villain, they turned Ambrose into a cartoonish bad guy, forcing him into cringe-worthy comedy segments, including the infamous live TV scene where he was injected in the butt. His TLC 2018 match against Rollins, which was expected to be emotionally charged, ended up being a massive letdown, lacking intensity and drama. Ambrose's frustration grew. He wasn't just fed up with nonsensical storylines. He also hated the stifling creative environment backstage. He described working in WWE as living in a box, where every idea was tightly controlled. In January 2019, WWE publicly announced that Ambrose would leave once his contract expired. In his final months, they even had him lose to Nia Jax on live TV, a subtle but clear form of retaliation. After his departure, Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, appeared on Chris Jericho's podcast, openly criticizing Vince McMahon and WWE's creative system. He revealed that he left because he couldn't stand how the company distorted his character. And when Moxley made his shocking AEW debut at Double or Nothing 2019, WWE officially treated him as persona non grata. From then on, WWE deliberately erased Dean Ambrose from their narrative. In Shield highlight videos, his image was cut out, focusing only on Rollins and Reigns. Even when his wife, Renee Young, was still working for WWE, the company avoided mentioning Ambrose. They didn't even acknowledge the birth of their child. In anniversary packages and old match replays, his appearances were edited down or spliced around, as if he had never existed. Today, Jon Moxley is a cornerstone of AEW, proving he didn't need WWE to shine. Ironically, WWE still can't fully erase Dean Ambrose's legacy. No matter how hard they try, the image of the lunatic fringe lives on in fans' memories, a reminder that no one can truly be erased from history if they once made the world remember their name. Number 2. Chris Benoit. The name Chris Benoit represents one of the darkest and most controversial chapters in WWE history, a name the company has tried to erase so completely that it's almost as if he never existed. It's hard to believe that at one point, Benoit was considered one of the best wrestlers on the planet. He was admired for his in-ring mastery, determination, and relentless fighting spirit. He embodied the wrestle real, live real mentality, a dedicated warrior who pushed his body to the limit to deliver the perfect match for the fans. Benoit joined WWE in the early 2000s after years of competing in Japan, ECW, and WCW. His career reached its pinnacle at WrestleMania XX, when he defeated Triple H and Shawn Michaels in a triple threat match to capture the World Heavyweight Championship inside Madison Square Garden. As Benoit broke down in tears, embracing his close friend Eddie Guerrero, who was WWE champion at the time, the entire arena erupted in a standing ovation. It became one of the most emotional scenes in wrestling history, symbolizing the dreams of those who rose from nothing to reach the top. Then, everything came crashing down overnight. In 2007, shocking news broke that Benoit, his wife, and their son were found dead in their home. Initially, WWE believed it to be a horrific tragedy. The company immediately canceled its scheduled programming to air a solemn tribute show, replaying Benoit's greatest career moments. Vince McMahon even scrapped his ongoing fake death storyline to dedicate the entire broadcast to honoring Benoit, a sign of the deep respect he had for one of his most dedicated performers. But just days later, when the investigation results were released, everything changed forever. The report confirmed that Chris Benoit had committed the murders, killing his wife and son before taking his own life. The revelation stunned the wrestling world to its core. WWE reacted immediately. They removed all Benoit-related content from their website, broadcasts, and video library. The tribute show was erased from the archives, his name was taken off all championship history lists, and from that moment on, he vanished from WWE's official history. Even legendary moments, like his WrestleMania celebration with Eddie Guerrero, were cut from highlight packages. When fans chanted his name during live shows, WWE ignored it or muted the audio on broadcasts. During the Thunderdome era, some viewers even tried to display Benoit's image on their virtual screens, but those were swiftly taken down and the individuals permanently banned. In this case, WWE can't be blamed. There's simply no way to justify Benoit's actions. Though he was once a ring genius, his crimes obliterated the legacy he built over decades. Even after Vince McMahon stepped down, the chances of Chris Benoit's name being mentioned again on any WWE platform are virtually zero. For WWE, Benoit is not a part of the past. He's a wound that must remain closed, a name that has been permanently erased from the company's history. Number 3. Jimmy Snuka. The story of Jimmy Superfly Snuka is another deep stain on WWE's legacy. On May 10, 1983, Snuka called an ambulance for his girlfriend and lover Nancy Argentino, claiming she'd been hurt in a minor accident. But when she arrived at the hospital, Nancy was pronounced dead from a severe skull fracture. The autopsy revealed more than 24 bruises across her body, clear evidence of abuse rather than a simple accident. Just months earlier, Snuka had been arrested for assaulting Nancy, but the case was quietly dropped. Her family refused to accept the accident explanation and hired their own attorney to pursue justice, but prosecutors at the time declined to press charges. The case faded into obscurity, and Snuka continued his career. Vince McMahon heavily promoted him, and Snuka became one of WWF's biggest stars, eventually being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 1996. It seemed the case was buried forever, until 2013, when the Morning Call reopened the story, highlighting numerous inconsistencies in Snuka's accounts. In his autobiography, he claimed Nancy slipped in the bathroom, but in 1983 he had told authorities she fell while they were horsing around outside the hotel. These contradictions prompted police to reopen the investigation. In 2015, Snuka was formally charged with third-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. WWE immediately severed all ties. They erased his presence from their platforms, revoked his Hall of Fame status, and suspended his Legends contract. The company stated that all content involving Snuka would be removed pending the outcome of the case, a swift and decisive response, knowing a media firestorm was brewing. Snuka maintained his innocence, but when the case went to trial, he was diagnosed with severe dementia and terminal stomach cancer. In June 2016, the court ruled him mentally unfit to stand trial. Just a few months later, on January 15, 2017, Snuka passed away at age 73. After his death, WWE quietly reinstated his Hall of Fame status and aired a short tribute video, perhaps in an attempt to close the chapter. But the shadow of Nancy Argentino's death remains a permanent stain. Though once adored by millions, Jimmy Superfly Snuka's name is forever tied to tragedy, becoming one of the figures WWE has had to erase from its history to avoid reopening one of its darkest chapters. Number 4. Chyna. Chyna's story is one of the most bitter tragedies in WWE history. A journey that took her from trailblazing icon to someone the very company that once celebrated her tried to erase. At her peak, Chyna wasn't just a symbol of power, she was living proof that women could stand toe-to-toe with, and even surpass, their male counterparts. She shattered every barrier, winning the Intercontinental Championship, entering the Royal Rumble, and accomplishing feats no other female wrestler had achieved before. But everything came crashing down in an instant. In 2001, Chyna left WWE under tense, fractured circumstances. The breaking point came from the infamous love triangle between her, Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon. She recounted the moment she discovered the truth during an interview on Open Radio. "I found a love letter sent to Hunter, and my world just collapsed." That betrayal not only devastated her personally, but also severed her professional ties with WWE. On top of that, Chyna felt undervalued. According to Jim Ross, she requested a salary on par with top stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. But at the time, WWE considered this demand unrealistic. Contract negotiations quickly broke down, and shortly after, she was released from the company. However, the main reason WWE essentially scrubbed Chyna from its history wasn't just about relationships or money. After leaving, she took a highly controversial path, entering the adult film industry. That was a line WWE, with its family-friendly image, refused to cross, even though they had previously collaborated with Playboy, Sable, Tori Wilson, and Playgirl, Shawn Michaels. Chyna's involvement in explicit films led WWE to completely sever all ties, even banning any mention of her name on television. In the years that followed, she made multiple attempts to reconcile with the company. In 2015, while her team was working on the documentary The Resurrection of Chyna, her manager called WWE headquarters. The receptionist simply responded that they were instructed not to take any calls from Chyna. No explanation. No second chances. When she passed away in 2016, the wrestling world was stunned. Fans called for WWE to properly honor her, the woman who paved the way for the modern generation of female wrestlers. WWE eventually inducted her into the Hall of Fame, but only as part of D-Generation X, not as an individual. Still, her legacy is undeniable. She was the ninth wonder of the world, the woman who forever changed the role of women in professional wrestling. And no matter how hard WWE tried to bury her image, Chyna remains in the hearts of fans as an enduring symbol of strength, courage, and defiance. Number 5. Fabulous Moolah. Fabulous Moolah was once celebrated as the mother of women's wrestling, a pioneer who helped bring female athletes to the ring. With over 3 decades of dominance and a record-breaking title reign, she was regarded as an untouchable legend in WWE history. But behind the spotlight lay a dark side that WWE would rather the world forget. While praised for paving the way for future female wrestlers, Moolah faced numerous disturbing allegations, abuse, manipulation, and even trafficking her trainees to powerful men in the industry. Several former students, including Mad Maxine, claimed that Moolah not only took most of their earnings but also forced them into unethical situations to keep their spots on the roster. Some even described her as a real-life heel, a villain who didn't need a scripted character. Moolah ran her own wrestling school, where dozens of young women lived under her strict control. Those who resisted were blacklisted or had their contracts terminated. A few, like Selena Majors and Beverly Shade, defended her, saying she was simply tough and disciplined. But the number of accusations far outweighed the defenses, leaving her legacy permanently tarnished. WWE once tried to honor her by naming the inaugural Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania 34, 2018, the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal. However, the intense public backlash forced WWE to cancel the plan just days later. Even the event's main sponsor, Snickers, pressured the company to change the name, unwilling to associate with someone so controversial. Today, although Moolah's name remains in the Hall of Fame, WWE rarely, if ever, mentions her. Fabulous Moolah was once a trailblazer, but her legacy is forever stained by the dark accusations surrounding her, a past WWE clearly prefers to bury deep within its history. Number 6. The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior, a symbol of intensity, power, and vibrant energy, once had millions of fans rising to their feet the moment his entrance music hit. But behind the bright lights and explosive performances was a turbulent relationship with WWE, one so fractured that the company at one point tried to erase his image from its history. Warrior was never an easy person to deal with backstage. He was infamous for his unpredictable behavior, massive ego, and unreasonable demands, which frustrated many within the company. Bret Hart recalled in his memoir that Warrior once ignored a Make-A-Wish child, further damaging his reputation. His relationship with Vince McMahon was equally volatile. In 1991, at the peak of his career, Warrior demanded an additional $550,000, the same merchandise royalties as Hulk Hogan, and paid time off. Vince reluctantly agreed to get him through WrestleMania 7, but shortly after SummerSlam, Warrior was fired. This was just the beginning of a years-long cycle of clashes. He returned multiple times, but each stint ended in conflict. In 1996, after defeating Triple H at WrestleMania 12, he was once again terminated, this time for no-showing events without notice. From then on, WWE practically erased his presence from programming. However, the company still reached out to invite him to participate in a documentary, The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. When he refused, WWE went ahead anyway, releasing a one-sided smear piece in which numerous former colleagues harshly criticized him. The DVD was widely condemned for turning a legendary figure into a villain. Although deeply hurt by the film, Warrior eventually reconciled with Vince. In 2014, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, marking a moment of closure after nearly 2 decades. During his speech, he declared that the DVD was completely wrong, not something that made him angry, but something that left a lasting scar. Shortly after his induction, Warrior passed away. WWE then created the Warrior Award to honor his fighting spirit, while quietly erasing the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior from its official narrative. Today, the company wants fans to remember him as the legendary warrior he was, not the man vilified in that controversial DVD. Number 7. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was once the living embodiment of WWE, the all-American hero whose "say your prayers and take your vitamins" mantra captivated millions. But there was a time when WWE nearly wiped every trace of him from its history, even removing him from the Hall of Fame after a scandal that shook the wrestling world. In 2015, a 2007 audio recording surfaced in which Hogan used racially offensive language. The backlash was immediate and intense, forcing WWE to take drastic action. They terminated his contract, erased him from the Hall of Fame, and scrubbed his likeness, videos, and merchandise from all platforms. It was a shocking moment. The very man who helped build WWE's foundation was suddenly exiled. During this period, Hogan attempted to explain himself in interviews, saying he hadn't known he was being recorded and that everyone makes mistakes. He claimed to have apologized to the locker room, but many wrestlers felt it wasn't genuine. Mark Henry, Kofi Kingston, and Shelton Benjamin publicly criticized Hogan, arguing that he wasn't sorry for what he said, only for being exposed. After 3 years in exile, Hogan was reinstated into the Hall of Fame in 2018 and made a few special appearances. However, the cool reception from fans and fellow wrestlers was hard to ignore. For many, the image of 1980s Hulk Hogan, the larger-than-life hero who inspired a generation, had been permanently tainted. Even though Hogan has tried to make amends with WWE, public forgiveness has been slow. Earlier this year, during the first-ever episode of Raw on Netflix, Hogan made a surprise appearance, only to be met with loud boos from the entire arena. He blamed it on fans misunderstanding him or being too used to seeing him as a heel. But the reality is simpler. The audience hasn't forgotten his offensive remarks, nor have they felt a sincere apology. Though Hogan's Hall of Fame status has been restored, that scandal remains a deep crack in his legacy, a stain on the once proud symbol of an entire generation of WWE fans. Number 8. Ric Flair. Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, a living symbol of professional wrestling, celebrated for his 16 world championships, once embodied elegance, power, and unmatched style. Yet even a legend like him experienced a moment when WWE nearly erased him from its history. In 2021, when the Dark Side of the Ring episode, Plane Ride from Hell aired, Flair's public image collapsed overnight. The episode revisited the infamous 2002 WWE charter flight, where several wrestlers got drunk, caused chaos, and acted inappropriately. Flair's alleged behavior was the most shocking. He was accused of removing his robe, walking naked around the plane, and behaving inappropriately toward a female flight attendant. The detailed account from attendant Heidi Doyle sparked outrage. The criticism intensified when Rob Van Dam appeared in the episode and seemed to confirm that he saw everything. Although RVD later clarified that his comments were edited out of context and he hadn't actually witnessed the act, Flair's reputation had already taken a severe hit. The fallout was immediate. Sponsors pulled their deals, and WWE swiftly severed ties. Flair's merchandise was removed from WWE Shop, his image was cut from the opening videos of Raw and SmackDown, and he was erased from promotional material. Nature Boy, once a symbol of flair and greatness, became a name WWE avoided mentioning. Flair repeatedly denied the allegations, insisting the story was exaggerated and that he never did what he was accused of. But no matter what he said, the backlash was too overwhelming to reverse. As time passed, the media storm faded, and Flair slowly reappeared in WWE history segments. Still, the stain from the plane ride from hell remains, and many view him differently because of it. He stands as a true icon, but also as proof that even one mistake, no matter how far in the past, can make WWE willing to delete anyone, even its greatest legends. Number 9. Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate, was once the ultimate symbol of dominance in WWE. Not only was he the youngest world champion in company history, but he also ended The Undertaker's 21-match undefeated WrestleMania streak and became one of the few to succeed at the highest levels in both WWE and the UFC. For over 2 decades, Lesnar was Vince McMahon's box office powerhouse, a megastar whose mere presence electrified arenas. But that image has almost vanished from the history WWE is now reshaping. Throughout his career, Lesnar largely stayed away from scandals. He lived a private, no-nonsense life focused on money and winning. But in early 2024, his name was suddenly tied to the explosive lawsuit involving Janelle Grant and Vince McMahon. Although the legal documents didn't mention him directly, the description of a former UFC heavyweight champion who worked for WWE led the public to immediately speculate it was Brock Lesnar, and everything changed from that moment. WWE reacted with stunning speed. Lesnar's merchandise was pulled or heavily discounted on WWE Shop, his likeness disappeared from promotional videos, and his name was virtually scrubbed from television broadcasts. There was no official suspension or firing announced, but it was clear WWE was quietly removing him from public view until the situation became clearer. Once a mainstay of WWE's biggest matches, Lesnar abruptly turned into a forbidden name. Fans quickly noticed his absence from highlight reels, WrestleMania legacy packages, and historical recaps, where his achievements were suddenly nowhere to be found. Although Brock Lesnar has since quietly returned after months away, the fracture between him and WWE hasn't fully healed. A figure once defined by power and dominance has now become a textbook example of how, no matter how great you are, one scandal is enough for WWE to make you disappear as if you never existed. Number 10. Sable. Sable was once the ultimate sex symbol of WWE, the woman who helped usher in the era of glamorous, provocative female stars during the Attitude Era. With her striking looks, fearless confidence, and magnetic presence, she became one of the biggest attractions in women's wrestling in the late 1990s. Starting out as Mark Merrow's manager, Sable eventually stepped out of his shadow, gracing the cover of Playboy and drawing millions of viewers each week. But her spotlight faded just as quickly as it rose. In 1999, Sable suddenly left WWE and filed a lawsuit against the company, accusing them of mistreatment, unsafe working conditions, and gender discrimination. The case made headlines and damaged WWE's public image at the time. Although the two sides eventually settled, her name virtually vanished from WWE programming and historical content afterward. When Sable returned in 2003, many believed she would reclaim her former glory. But her comeback was short-lived and failed to repair her fractured image. She departed again in 2004, and from then on, her presence was largely scrubbed from retrospectives, highlight reels, and Hall of Fame-style tributes. Today, even though she played a pioneering role in bringing mainstream attention to women in WWE, Sable is remembered as a forgotten shadow. The company rarely, if ever, mentions her, despite the fact that she's married to Brock Lesnar, one of WWE's biggest modern stars. It's a quiet ending for a woman who once captivated the entire world. Number 11. Vince McMahon, the most powerful man in WWE history. Vince McMahon transformed professional wrestling into a global entertainment empire. For over 4 decades, he was the driving force behind the company, the man behind every legend, every storyline, and every golden era of WWE. Without him, there would be no WrestleMania, no The Rock, no Stone Cold Steve Austin, and no solid foundation for WWE to stand on today. Yet ironically, the very man who built the company's history is now being quietly erased from it. It all began when a series of serious allegations were brought against Vince McMahon. In 2024, the Janelle Grant lawsuit became the tipping point, with documents revealing that Vince had paid nearly $20 million off the books to settle various harassment and abuse of power scandals between 2006 and 2022. While the final verdict has not yet been reached, the severity of the accusations was enough to shake the entire WWE landscape. This wasn't the first time Vince faced controversy. From the steroid trial in 1993 to assault allegations in 1992 and years of rumors about his treatment of female employees, he had weathered many storms before. But this time, his luck ran out. As soon as the scandal broke, WWE swiftly moved to scrub his presence from their programming. Opening montages that once featured him were replaced. Iconic moments like the 2011 CM Punk Pipe Bomb segment were edited, and the name Vince McMahon virtually disappeared from official broadcasts. Even so, it's nearly impossible for WWE to fully erase him. Vince McMahon didn't just shape the modern era of WWE, he's the reason it exists. But now, his once untouchable legacy has been overshadowed by scandal. The Janelle Grant lawsuit is still ongoing, but one thing is almost certain: Vince McMahon will never be welcomed back to WWE. A bitter ending for the man who built an empire, only to be erased by it. Those names may have been buried by WWE, but history never forgets. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories from Wrestling Sphere.